my video. So a lot of people have been asking me the question of examples for low, medium, and high risk. Um, Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to kind of give you perfect examples or exact examples because it does actually vary from year to year and from individual basis. So what I'll do is I'll try and give as much information and hopefully this can help. So first of all, I just wanted to kind of give you a kind of a rough description of what a low, medium, and high is. So, low is basically acceptable risk. So this is something that's basically hasn't got any hits. What do you call it? No PEPs, no sanctions, no adverse news, um, no negative news, and sometimes it could have a negative news, but it's so old and not as I guess trivial. Like it's not fraud related. It's not any kind of anti money laundering or anything of the sort. Any kind of crime, but negative in a different way, which may not be related. So low is a little bit. It's a lot more easier to kind of discount. However, medium and high is a lot more difficult to discount. So medium, I can't really give you much of an example of that, but let me go with high first and then you understand what medium would probably be more likely. So, a high is basically risk that's not acceptable. So, they could be currently a PEP, the family member could be currently a PEP, there may be negative news, there may be in the pol- politic kind of area or government area. It could be in an organize. It doesn't have to be individual. It can be actually a business with so much negative news. Good examples are high risk countries like Russia, um, UAE areas, Syria could be sanctioned countries. Um, so it's those high risk countries that could flag up more negative news. A good Some companies um, mention companies or organizations that are oil based could be more corrupted, for example. So they classify those as high risk. Some companies would classify construction companies as high risks. So it kind of varies from company to company. So it's kind of difficult to provide exact answers because or examples because it does vary from company to company. So you can just use these kind of examples in interviews and that would be sufficient. Okay, and then of course medium is in between low and high. So there could be possible negative news which is over 6 months old. However, they might have a court case recently that is ongoing, but they're not a PEP. So it's kind of like looking at all the examples of sanction hits and adverse news, and if it's a PEP or if they're related to a PEP, um, how much income and turnover they have. So that can kind of conclude if it would be in between a high risk and a medium, because medium you may not feel like it's as important as a high risk, which will need to be reevaluated on a yearly basis. And of course, medium doesn't need to have that. So let me just go to low risk quickly. So I've just wrote here the good examples are basically those companies or those individuals who have no adverse news, they can show their wealth easily, and they have no sanctions or any kind of pet hits with them or related to them. These are usually small companies, for example, as a perfect example, small balances, low turnover, government departments and government owned companies, regulators, and statutory bodies as perfect examples. Okay, and then I've got the medium risk. Um, These are customers that likely pose a higher than average risk to a bank. So it could be a person in a business industry and trading activities that are in a residence or place where business has a scope or history of unlawful trading or business activity. So, like I said, this could be any kind of like negative news behind it, or where clients profile the person opening the account according to the perception of the branch is uncertain or undoubtful, dubious. So it could be someone who we don't know where that money's come from, where their income has come from, where their turnover has come from. So, yeah. Um, and an example of a high risk is basically enhanced due diligence is required because there is certain hits. So they could have a higher net worth, negative news, PEPs. They could be a charity or trust or exposed to a PEP if they're not themselves. So I wrote here, this is when a customer feels like they're at a higher risk or bank is at a higher risk. A good example is someone like Margaret Thatcher, any kind of negative news that's been coming through about individual, could be people that they're hunting for in the news. It could be companies that have had so much negative news that they've had such a bad reputation. So you can kind of get a good idea and a grasp of what kind of companies I'm referring to. Like it could be oil companies, it could be companies that are in high risk jurisdictions or sanctioned countries that pose a threat or fraud or any kind of money laundering with other countries. So those would be perfect examples for high risk. And then, of course, in between high risk and low risk would be those companies that you can kind of declare the wealth. However, there is some negative news. Um, and some of the negative news can be over 6 years old or 9 years old, depending on what company you're working for, and you can eliminate or discount it. So you don't have to monitor it or look at it on a yearly basis. Hopefully that has helped, and thank you for watching and listening.